Hello everyone, I'm happy to be back, and this time I'm talking about how Green Arrow would probably fight in real life. So let's just get into it. Similar to Batman, Oliver Queen was the son of a billionaire. However, unlike Batman, Oliver lost all of his money buying GameStop and AMC stock on Robinhood, thus inspiring him to pick up the mantle of Green Arrow. Okay, so that's not what really happened. Oliver spent his youth partying and flaunting his wealth. Well, one day when he was a young adult, Oliver's dad took him on a yacht trip. Unfortunately, there was a storm which caused the yacht to sink, with Oliver being the sole survivor and becoming a castaway. Luckily for Oliver, he ended up drifting near a semi deserted island, except, unfortunately for him, the island was super deadly with dangerous wildlife and the odd group of mercenaries, bad guys, and supervillains already living there. In order to survive, Oliver learned to live off the land and, most importantly, how to craft and use a bow and arrow. After being stranded on the island for 5 years, facing constant combat and all around rough living, Oliver was eventually rescued and returned home. When Oliver returned home, he decided to pick up the mantle of the Green Arrow and decided to fight crime, to avenge his father or fix his city or whatever. Green Arrow is different from a lot of other heroes and villains that I've covered in that he really only has one style of fighting, which just makes it easier for me to talk about. Oliver is an excellent shot, able to shoot with almost perfect accuracy up until the limits of what arrows are capable of. Additionally, if you were on YouTube a couple of years back, you'd probably remember that video of Lars Anderson going around. Although there's been some criticism about the practicality of what Lars does, I think the video shows a fair example of what a real-life Green Arrow might be capable of. However, you just have to know that in order to do all those trick shots, he's using a bow with a lot less tensile, a lot less strength. So basically, the bow can't shoot as far as like a war bow or a modern hunting bow, but it lets you shoot quicker and do all those quick shots. So let's just move on. If you saw the show Arrow, like I did, at least for the earlier seasons, you will know that the show often makes the argument that bows can be better than guns in certain circumstances. While it is true that a bow and arrow might be quieter than a gunshot, the disadvantages of using a bow and arrow are extensive. For instance, arrows as projectiles lack the same penetrating power, damage capability, firing rate, storage capacity, ability to fire from cover, ease of use, and accuracy as do bullets. All this stuff I think is pretty obvious. I think the show Arrow makes an argument that arrows can go through Kevlar better than bullets, which is fair, I guess. But, I mean, getting shot in body armor is lethal with higher caliber rounds anyway, and can still be debilitating even if you're hit with a lower caliber round. Arrows are more useful than bullets for traveling in the water, but, I mean, you can't fire a bow and arrow underwater anyway, so, I mean, the advantage is pretty limited. Okay, so now that I've talked poorly about bows, let me say some good things. Bows are way more useful than hand-to-hand weapons. For example, English longbowmen practically ran the battlefield back in the day. Being able to kill or wound someone from far away is a lot safer than engaging in hand-to-hand combat or something like a sword fight. In the modern day, bows are designed even better, allowing distance up to 400 yards and accurate shots, well, substantially shorter than that. Anyway, Green Arrow doesn't really use bows in the traditional sense. Green Arrow has outfitted his arrows with different capabilities, such as explosive arrows, stun arrows, fire arrows, non-lethal arrows, grappling hook arrows, and he will generally modify arrows for whatever purpose he needs for the situation, even sometimes just, taping a boxing glove to the end of an arrow, because, yeah, that's a good idea. A lot of these modifications seem to actually make the arrows a bit less effective, in my opinion. Like, why would you need a taser arrow when you could just have a taser or an arrow? But never mind. Actually, because the arrows don't need to penetrate to do what they're supposed to do, I mean, at least that kind of lets the Green Arrow use the lower strength bow, so he doesn't have to really worry about hitting someone from, 500 feet away. he's running around, he's shooting arrows at people who are 20 feet away, and they don't need to really penetrate. They're just going to, like, explode in smoke or whatever. So, there might be something to it. Here's another thing he could use. He could also use explosive arrows. Explosive arrows would probably be the deadliest weapon in Green Arrow's arsenal. I mean, Rambo made pretty good use of them. Would an explosive arrow have an advantage over something like a grenade launcher? In my opinion, not really, because grenade launchers do the same thing with bigger rounds, higher accuracy, and distance capabilities. And also, it takes strength to pull back the actual, what the fuck is that called? The actual line on a bow and arrow. I should have done more archery research. It takes more to pull that back, right? And you don't have to do that if you can just fire a trigger. And also, when you shoot a grenade launcher, it's a bit safer. Like, it won't explode if it doesn't travel a certain amount of distance, where if you drop your explosive arrow on the head, it might just blow you up. Fun fact, in one episode of the Justice League Unlimited show that was pretty awesome, Green Arrow and his sidekick partner, whatever, Red Arrow, they both shot arrows that were deadly enough to almost stun a Superman-level villain. So really, the sky is kind of the limit with Green Arrow. I mean, he can trick out his arrows as much as he wants. He could even put like a little nuclear reactor at the tip of an arrow if he really wanted to. The best way to put it is that Green Arrow is by no means the most practical hero. He probably loses out to a lot of the assassin-type villains that I've talked about before, and we'll talk about more in the future. And also heroes with better technology and better armor. Like the Robins are kind of bulletproof, but Green Arrow just kind of wears, like, a Robin Hood outfit most of the time. But on the other hand, his use of a ranged weapon does give him an advantage over a lot of what the other heroes are using, which is just like their bare hands or clubs or whatever. Yep, so that's the end of the video. This one was relatively short because there wasn't too much to speak about regarding Green Arrow's capabilities. I know in Arrow, Oliver knows some martial arts, but most of the time Green Arrow doesn't really know how to fight hand-to-hand, so that's why I didn't bring it up. He's just going to shoot arrows at you. That's really his whole thing. Next up is a surprise that I think a lot of you have been waiting for. Just kidding. I'm going to talk about the Polka Dot Man next. So see you next time. Subscribe. Watch my other stuff if you're interested. Catch you later. Bye-bye.